I'm Marin.
And I'm Christie.
And you're listening to Hung, a podcast where we talk about true crime from the court of law to the court of public opinion.
Well, we are back for Episode 2 of the Kouri Richins trial, the Utah poisoning murder.
All these trad wives going crazy. Her and Ruby Frankie, like she's a weird Mormon Utah trad wife.
Say this in this case, Kouri's not Mormon. I don't know if she was raised Mormon or not, but she was not active Mormon at all. Eric had served a mission for the Mormon Church, but was no longer active and practicing in the faith. And I don't know.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, she's not really a trad wife. She does her own business stuff, but, you know.
Yeah. It's not the typical, what we would call, like, a Utah Mormon case, right? She's not that, so, yeah. But it still is a Utah case and a...
Well, if she drugged his dirty soda, it would be different.
She drugged his Moscow Mule.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yep. True. Good point. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the investigation, the searches, and then, like I said at the end of last episode, we're going to talk about the housekeeper and what she has to testify about drugs that she purchased for Kouri.
What she has to testify about. Drugs.
Drugs, of course. All housekeepers are a good source for drugs.
Yeah, like... That's overreaching the scope of the job, I think, if you're asking your housekeeper to get you drugs.
Yeah, for sure.
That's not appropriate for my job title.
Yeah. So the next witness that we have to talk about is the lead crime scene tech, and they had a 3D scan that they made of the house. Kind of like if you're doing a 3D video tour online of an apartment or a house where they have the camera go in 360 degrees and capture all of it. And so you can go from room to room and...
That's interesting.
Yeah. So they used that.
It just makes me think, if anybody has seen, I think is it called Jury Duty? But did you watch that?
I didn't watch it. You and Dad watched it.
Yeah. I just wondered if you'd watched it later, but there's this scene where, if you don't know, it's like this show where everyone on it is an actor except for one guy, and he's been called for jury duty, and he doesn't know that all of this is scripted and
staged, right?
Yeah, they're just like pranking him with like just putting these ridiculous scenarios in front of him, and the defense attorney puts together a video example of what he said his client did, and he's like, my nephew did this for me on Roblox or something like that, and he like shows it's just so, it does just looks like
Lego people type of thing.
Yes, but it's like it's like bad, like he just stops it and he's like, okay, I'm done. And I guess that none of the actors on the jury had been shown this prior or knew what was happening, and so they were like blindsided by it and trying to like keep their cool with it. But that just makes me think of that. This is way more high tech. That's actually super interesting that they did that. You could go through like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing that they did is they went in and executed 11 different search warrants in the house over the time between Eric's death and when the trial started. And the last search, I think, took place around 2 weeks before the trial started. So over a long period of time, they were still doing more searches. And each search, they have identified what they're looking for. So it's not like they just search and they just take stuff. They have to identify, hey, we're looking for this, we're looking for that, we're looking for this. And then they go in and they're looking for those specific items.
And obviously the house has been released back to her at some point, right? Like she's living in this house or no?
She was living in the house for about a year before she was arrested. And then after that, she was in jail. And so they were still conducting searches and no one was living in the house anymore. But she did live there for a year. So, And I'm sure a number of those searches were performed while she was still living in the house. But on this video, they have dots marking where each of the items that they took into evidence were in that room. They actually use air tags that shows the exact location where those items were found. They would take you through the rooms and show you, okay, here's where this was, here's where that item was, which was kind of interesting to see.
And they did show it on the video, so you were able to see it. That's cool.
Yes, they did. So she had gotten to the scene at about 6:30 in the morning, which was about 3 hours after the 911 call was placed. They did open that safe on Eric's bedside table. It had a couple guns, ammunition, a large amount of cash, a checkbook, and some written documents. She states that they did not find any drugs, THC gummies, or drug paraphernalia in the bedroom or the bathroom. Obviously, later on, they do find some stuff, but they didn't find anything at that time. And of course, they weren't doing an extensive search. They did a more extensive search after they got a search warrant. And they did take Eric's phone into evidence, some medications that they found in addition to what had already been found by the police officer that was assigned that task initially. Later on, they came back and they did find THC gummies on that top shelf in that bathroom cabinet. And they also found gummies inside a kitchen cabinet above the fridge, a couple packets, I think inside another cabinet in the kitchen, and then later in the pocket of a jacket that was in the master bedroom closet. And so they tagged where all of those were found. Also, there was a jacket on the kitchen counter, and inside the jacket pocket was a pair of tweezers. And they did take the tweezers into evidence. I don't know if they're like she's getting pills out of something using the tweezers or why they thought the tweezers were significant. The other thing that I thought is that it seemed like this search was performed not super close to when the death occurred, so then that makes the tweezers seem less significant to me.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that they discussed the searches, I wasn't clear, like what dates the different searches were performed and what they found each time. So it did show where items were located that they took into evidence, but I wasn't always clear what the date was that they were doing these searches, and therefore how significant some of these items might have been to the actual event.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things, though, were the electronics. We mentioned that they took 7 or 8 phones or something into evidence, and when they did one of the searches, they found a phone of Kouri's that was in a dresser drawer, kind of buried a little bit under some clothes, which is kind of weird if that's your primary phone, that you tucked your phone away, maybe hoping that they wouldn't find it or something.
Mm-hmm.
So they had photographs of that and where it was, and it did seem kind of strange. Some other things that they found as far as they were looking for documents, handwritten things, but they never really went into what those documents were. It's more setting the stage for things. And they also did bring in the digital forensics guy, and he talked about downloading the information from some of these phones, entered it in evidence, but we didn't see any of that evidence yet. It was more just introducing it and getting it into evidence. And I guess they'll show some things about it later.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt that same way about the things that they took into evidence from the house. You know, a journal, a notebook, tweezers. I mean, the medications made the most sense.
A journal makes sense too, in some ways, if you're dumb enough to confess your crimes in your journal.
True.
Dear diary.
Though it was his journal, and it was his mission journal, which was not
relevant.
No, so it was more for his handwriting, I think, is why they took it, not really for the contents in the journal. The other thing that they did was using that 3D imaging. They were able to take measurements from the bedroom to the front door, from the bedroom to the kitchen, from the bedroom to the master bathroom for estimating where Kouri may have gone.
With her
during
200 feet?
Yes, during that time that she was walking around the house. the defense brings up they have a dog. Did they measure from the master bedroom where the dog typically sleeps to the back patio door where she would have let the dog out? Which could explain her going in, oh, okay, the dog needs to be let out. She lets the dog out and then lets the dog back in and walks back to the master bedroom. So that's possible, though I've never heard Kouri state that she did that during that time, and I don't know if it will ever be stated that she did that. It was implied by the defense that that was a likely scenario or something, or it could have been that, and they didn't check into the measurements on that.
This just feels like a very specific event if that's what happened. To
Right.
be like, well, I went and let the dog out. Why would you not say that?
Right. And I can understand maybe you're not thinking about that detail when you're talking about finding your husband.
No,
I
but
don't
later
know.
on, if they ask you those questions,
Right.
but I don't
Yeah.
know.
The defense at this point is trying to get the 911 call into evidence, and the state was objecting based on hearsay rules, which I think is interesting. So I don't know if it's like, no, it's hearsay unless the 911 operator is the one admitting it into evidence because they're the one speaking on it. So they didn't get it in at this point. It sounds like maybe the state was saying, oh, we're going to admit it at some point. So I imagine that will happen.
It's weird. They're like, we want you to hear the couple of pieces that we played in our opening
Right.
statements, but we don't want you to hear the whole thing.
Well, the defense is trying to get the whole thing in, and the defense is the one that played the snippet
Right.
for their opening statement, and the state is objecting to them putting it in at this point. I think it was kind of more of a timing thing. I guess this witness did secure the 911 recording and put it into evidence, which is why I think they were trying to get it in that way, because she obtained the recording, verified the recording as being the 911 call, and then it went into the evidence locker.
Okay.
Yeah. And that it wouldn't have been tampered with and all of that, that it was a legitimate recording. So I don't know why the state was so resistant to having it brought in at this point, but it does seem like it's going to come in at some point anyway. Then there is this part where the defense attorney says, okay, so I'm going to be very specific in my wording here. And if you can kind of use this wording, that would be appreciated, right? That would be great. And so she says, so at some point, were there recordings between Ms. Richins and her family that you obtained recordings of? And she was confused and like, well, can you clarify? And she says, on about a weekly basis for a while, were you downloading calls between Kouri Richins and her family? And she says, are you talking about the jail calls? Which I think is the exact thing the defense attorney was trying to get her to not say.
Right.
You know, saying, I'm trying to use this very specific language and not...
She was in jail. I mean, she had to have been in jail before the trial. She was arrested at some point. So it's silly to be like, no, we don't want them to know she was in jail. She was.
It's like everyone imagines that if someone's on trial for murder, they're probably in jail awaiting trial. I don't think that's so weird.
No, even innocent people go to jail before their trial.
Right.
If they've been arrested, you know? It doesn't mean anything. But it would be more weird if they were recording her calls and she wasn't in jail on a recorded line.
Why would you have that, right? Unless you've got a warrant to tap her phone or something, which I don't know.
Week, yeah, it's just so weird.
Yeah, and then of course the defense attorney, she's like, ooh, she says, you know, move to strike and need to approach, and so they go have a bench conference, and when they come back, the judge says, okay, well, you know, you can't consider whether or not the defendant has been in custody, was in custody at any point in time. That's not evidence. So it's kind of like, okay, this might look bad for our client and might make you see them in a certain way. And the judge is like, well, you can't take that into account as to guilt or innocence, the fact that she's in jail. And I'm like, I don't think anyone is surprised that someone that's on trial for murder is sitting in jail until their trial.
No, it sounds like, whoa, jail calls, but then you're like, well, yeah, duh. She had to be in jail.
Right. Yeah, and I think, oh man, you're having all these calls recorded and whatever.
It's like he's telling them, don't consider the fact that she was arrested.
Right. That's not evidence of guilt just because you're arrested, which is true.
It is true.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, yeah, duh. Anyway, like.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that I don't think influences a jury. Like, le gasp. What?
Yeah.
She's sitting in prison right now? Like, okay. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Though I did notice she wears the same shirt that has like a high collar and some pleats, like 3 pleats or something around the neckline. And she has it in multiple colors. She has it in white. She has it in cream. I don't remember what the third color was, but it seems like she's like, okay, buy all the colors of this shirt. And she just is wearing that shirt pretty much every day of trial so far that I've watched. So
this is my only innocent outfit.
I mean, it does look a little bit like a priest collar type, it has like a little bit of a collar and is very prim and proper. And that's, I'm sure, the idea. And she always has her hair slicked back into a bun and wearing pretty minimal makeup. So,
yeah, you 100%. There is
a look.
Right. There's psychology behind that defense attorneys use. Like, they want you to look professional and innocent and wholesome.
Correct. Yeah. That's really true. But then they don't really go into the jail calls at all beyond just saying, okay, she did take recordings of Kouri's calls and they're true and accurate.
Right. And it's like the defense is like, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Now that you know it's a jail call, I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Like, okay. The contents are not different.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that the defense gets onto is there was an empty hydrocodone bottle next to Eric's bed, which is interesting because one person says it came from the nightstand, but then later the lead EMT that already testified in body cam says, yeah, but that's not his side of the bed. That's her side of the bed. I'm not sure if it really was found on his side of the bed, but someone had set it down somewhere else. And then she's like, wait a minute, but that's not on the right side of the bed that he would have had access to it. His side of the bed's over here. But I did notice her saying that in the body cam footage. So I don't know what to make of that. So there's that empty pill bottle. And the defense attorney is asking, well, sometimes people put other things in empty pill bottles. In that case, couldn't that be considered drug paraphernalia? Was that empty pill bottle ever tested to see if there were any traces of fentanyl in that bottle? And apparently that bottle disappeared somewhere. I mean, it was definitely taken into evidence. It was put in the body bag with him. It got to the morgue. It was documented and entered into evidence, but it never got sent to any labs. It kind of seems like it disappeared somewhere, or if it didn't disappear, then it just was never tested anywhere. It was never showing anything. But, I think that's valid to think, oh, well, could there have been fentanyl in that bottle? And it also seems like if someone is trying to stage it to look like some sort of overdose, would someone set an empty pill bottle there to indicate?
Right. It doesn't matter
something.
what you overdosed on. Well, they know it's not what was on the bottle. Like the tag.
And the prescription was from 2016. So it was a really old pill bottle. And I think that was like, okay, well, probably wasn't hydrocodone still in there from way before. And
weird that you would still have an empty bottle. So something would be in it.
Right.
Why would you have an empty bottle from 2016 on your nightstand?
Right. Unless you had a really old prescription for hydrocodone and you just weren't taking them and there was still some left over and you're like, hey, I've got these, and you decide to take them. I mean, you could, even though they're long expired, you could still take them.
Right. And people do sometimes not take all of their opioids and save them. So
Yes.
But they were prescribed to Kouri?
No, they were just prescribed to Eric. Yeah. He had been prescribed some medications for back pain or something like that at one point, and so that was a legitimate prescription that he'd had filled 8 years prior, but unclear why he still had that bottle and why it was next to his bed. So they did a lot of searches, and the defense wanted to point out, look at all the searches, you keep looking for stuff, but you haven't found anything, or like, why do you keep searching? And the CSI tech is pointing out, well, it's because the investigation is ongoing. And as we gather information, then there are specific things that we recognize. Oh, hey, we need to go in and see if we can locate this. And then we get some other information and we say, oh, okay, let's go in and see if we can find this other thing. So I think people's impression of executing a search warrant is that they just go through everything and find anything that seems like it applies. But that's actually not the way that it works. You have to identify what things you think are going to be significant and what things you're looking to seize. You can't just take anything that you want. You have to identify what specific things you're looking for. And that's kind of based on your understanding or information that you have at the time that you're saying, okay, we're looking for illicit drugs. We're looking for any other medications that might have been found. We're looking for, electronic devices or whatever.
If, say, like they did that and they find a confession note written by Kouri Richins, they can't take it into evidence if they find something that's like very obvious when they're there. I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, my guess is no. I'm not 100% on that, but I do know that this search warrant is very specific about what they're looking for and what they're allowed to take into evidence. So that makes me think that they can't just like, aha, and just randomly take something. Well, but I don't know if that's true.
At the very least, it would be suspect if they just said random things and then they came and looked and found other things, right?
Right.
But it's like, as long as they also found the thing that they were actually looking for, but I don't know. That's interesting. Okay, I just looked it up because I was curious. I wanted to see, like, okay, could they really just, like, be like, well, hope that stays there while I go get another search warrant? So there is the plain view doctrine. If the officers executing a warrant for medication bottles happen to see other evidence of a crime that's just out there in the open, they can seize that. But they couldn't go like searching in closets that have nothing to do with what they're looking for. So they can't just get a search warrant for whatever and then go search the whole house top to bottom.
Right.
But if while they're searching for one thing, they find something else, they can also seize it.
But the whole in plain sight thing makes me think, well, if you're searching through a drawer for something that's on the search warrant and you find something else, is that considered in plain sight? Because
I think yes. The example they give is, so if a warrant is for medication bottles in a bathroom and bedroom, an officer searching those rooms spot a bloody knife on a nightstand or a stack of suspicious documents on a desk, that's fair game.
Yes, but that's on a nightstand, on a desk, right, which is out in plain view, not in a drawer.
Yes. But it says, but if they go searching a locked safe or a garage that has nothing to do with where pill bottles would plausibly be, anything found there could get thrown out as exceeding the warrant's scope. So I would say, even if it's not on the bathroom counter, if you're looking in bathroom cupboards for things, even though it's not in plain sight, you're still looking in a spot that makes sense for what your warrant is about.
Okay. That's good information. So they did bring up that there were Moscow Mule mugs in the home, which corroborates Kouri's story. Those were sent for testing, which was negative, which you wouldn't expect to be positive if they've already been run through the dishwasher. But they also found THC gummies, which corroborated Kouri's story. And measurements of the home, according to the defense, matched the cell phone data showing that Kouri was moving around. She said she was moving around. And that's also backed up by the movement of her phone. So everything she said was consistent with the things that they found. Yeah, there were THC gummies. He didn't take them, we know. But
right.
Yeah, I took my phone and I walked around and then I ended up getting in bed. Okay, well, that matches. Oh, we had gotten these new Moscow Mules mugs that someone gave us and we used those that night. They did have those. I'm not sure how important all of those things are as far as corroborating evidence.
Right.
I think mostly what she's saying about her movements before calling 911, the fact that she said that she got her phone and she was doing stuff and then she got in bed and noticed he was cold. The fact that it does show she was walking around with her phone, what she's saying does match up with that.
Mm-hmm.
They do bring up that on at least 2 occasions, that private investigator that was hired by the trust had contacted law enforcement about some things that he found in the house that he thought were significant. And one of those things was a letter or an envelope that was sitting on the foot of the bed. And clearly that envelope has not been sitting on the foot of the bed since the day of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the contents of the envelope were. It looks like they did come and they did take it, but they had already performed 7 other searches before that. So that envelope was not there in the body cam footage. It wasn't there. So somehow that envelope was put there. That letter was there.
And that is something where they were probably there for something else and saw that there and took it. Because how would you know to look for a letter years later?
Right.
know?
Well, yeah, it was a private investigator that saw that there was a letter on the bed and notified law enforcement. And they came and they collected the letter. Mm-hmm. But it is a little bit like, okay, yeah, but who put the letter there? How did the letter get on the end of the bed? And why would you give it weight if you've done 7 searches and it clearly wasn't there? Someone placed it there. Who? And obviously it happened well after the fact. And so it's a little bit strange. So I don't know. And I'm curious what the letter was, and I don't know if that is going to be entered into evidence or not. And then the other thing was the private investigator located a recording device, and he notified law enforcement, and they came and collected that recording device. I have no idea what it recorded, if it has anything of significance on there, but he's the one that pointed it out. And then they also pointed out the Apple Watch. So one of the things that Eric's sister Katie noted about what happened in those early hours of Eric's death was that one of the boys had said, "I want Dad's Apple Watch." So Kouri had taken it, and according to Katie, she had wiped it and then given it to the son. And the defense was very much like, well, don't you know, like an Apple Watch, you can access all the information that's on someone's iPhone, and they probably wouldn't want their child to be able to access everything that was on their phone. And I don't know if that's the way it works. I don't know if you can access everything on your phone from your Apple Watch.
I think if it's connected to your phone and you're paying the monthly fee for it to be like, well, it still could be, but you can't necessarily receive calls or texts on it if your phone is off, unless you're paying monthly for it to have service. But otherwise, if it's on Wi-Fi, I think it is connected to anything that's compatible with both devices.
So are you able to, for example, pull up all the photographs that are on the iPhone from your Apple Watch?
Yes.
Okay. So then that point is a good one for the defense. Like, yeah, well, we may not want the kid able to access anything and everything that is on Dad's cell phone. Mm-hmm. And so clearing that. But during the testimony,
I just don't see how there could be anything on the watch that's not on the phone.
Right.
So it's kind of a moot point if they have the phone.
Right. Yeah. I agree. It's more, I think the sister was saying she thought it was strange that she just wiped the watch and gave it to him. And the defense attorney, when she was questioning the CSI tech, was saying, well, you were able to get some data off of the Apple Watch, correct? Yes, so then that shows it wasn't all deleted. But then it's also like they made the argument, well, don't you think it's appropriate if you're going to give the Apple Watch to your kid that you don't want them to have access to everything on the phone? And then in the next breath, you're saying, well, this is evidence that she didn't wipe the watch because they were able to get information off of it. So which is it? I hate when they do both things, like one or the other. It's almost like they're covering every potential response. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, it doesn't strike me as strange. I mean, I think you do that anytime you give someone...
You're going to give them a device, right?
Yeah. It's like you would just factory reset it, basically, and now it's yours. That makes sense to me. I've taken old iPhones of grandma's, and I did that too. Not even because I don't want to have access to the things you have on here, but it's because, well, it was yours and now it's mine, and so we just reset it all. If there was stuff that you could hide, it just doesn't feel like there would be much that you could hide that's not accessible by the cell phone.
Right.
If she'd made Google searches about if I wipe an Apple Watch, does it also wipe the phone? Or like things like that. But it just seems like she just did it because that's what you do.
Yeah. So one of the other things that was brought up in her testimony was the quetiapine pills, which are the antipsychotics that were prescribed to Kouri. He did have a small amount in his stomach, and the pills that were found remaining in the bottle, I think there was only one pill, and it was cut in half. She wasn't sure if it was cut in half when they seized it or not. She couldn't remember, but a normal dose of quetiapine would be 75 milligrams, 100 milligrams, 200 milligrams, something like that. And he had 11 milligrams in his stomach, so it was a very small amount. But it certainly wasn't enough that it would do anything really to him. So, not really sure.
Well, it doesn't seem like my theory was right on that then. That he's like feeling the effects of the fentanyl but doesn't know what it's from. It's like, whoa, what's happening? Did I take an antipsychotic? But would you be aware enough to be like, well, let me cut it in half though?
Right. I'm only going to take half of this little pill.
Unless they were already cut in half and she was only taking half a pill, maybe.
Right. And that's very possible that that's the dose that she would take, is a smaller dose. The defense indicates that Eric's work trucks were never searched. I don't know if that's true or not. The Under Armour jacket that they took that had the tweezers in the pocket, they didn't take until 2025, so 3 years later. And I think they ran it for residue of fentanyl or something like that. And of course it was negative. I don't know how you would expect that to still be there 3 years later. Not saying it's not worth checking, but...
right. But even if you did find evidence of it, you could argue that it's not related, too.
Yeah, you could. And there was no search warrant on the date of Eric's death, so they weren't able to do a full search that day, is the state's point that they come back with. And the state asked if there was a brown truck, which maybe that was his work truck, present during the search, and she doesn't recall. So I don't know if he's implying that the truck wasn't there and that's why it didn't get searched. I don't really know. They never really make it all that clear.
Doesn't seem like the biggest misstep ever to not search a car that was not involved in the event.
If they're looking for drugs of some sort, looking in the truck that he drove every day for evidence of him having drugs that maybe he was taking, that would make sense to be looking in his vehicle for evidence of that. So they did have these little clear baggies with the THC gummies in them. And they were these tiny little plastic baggies that looked like the size that an extra button would come in for a shirt. So they were very small baggies. And I think there were 3 or 4 baggies that had been taken like that. And they all had different numbers of gummies in them. So you could tell that they were all different baggies because the volumes were different. And the defense at first was like, yeah, well, aren't these all the same? Like, didn't this come from? She says, no, that came from a different place. Because you can see here are the baggies that we took from this one place. Here's this other baggie. It doesn't have the same quantity in it. It was from a different location. But I mean, it's interesting that later on, the testimony of the housekeeper, the drugs that she got on the final 3 occasions were in little baggies that she describes as like the baggies that you get a spare button for a shirt. She describes them that way. And that's exactly what those baggies with the THC gummies look like. So it did make me curious if those baggies originally had the drugs in them that the housekeeper got from this other source, and then gummies got placed into those bags from, like they had these bigger bags, like actual gummy bears that you would get, kind of a small packet that you might get in a little Lunchable or something, that's kind of small, but you
like a personal pack.
Yeah, but you likely aren't eating all of those gummies at once. So maybe, we've got these baggies, and maybe you're storing some of those in that, because they were saying, here's these baggies. They have gummies in them, but they're clear baggies, so they could have come from some illicit source. But it's possible, in my mind, that it was one of the legitimate baggies that they had that were printed on, and they opened it and started to use it, but they didn't use all of them, and they moved the leftover gummies into those little plastic baggies that they had already. That's a thought that came up for me. Nobody else said it, but...
That they had already, because they used to have buttons in them, or from other drugs?
From the drugs that were purchased.
Gotcha.
Yeah, from the drugs that were purchased.
Okay. Yeah, because, but they can't be saying that maybe then it was accidentally laced because it was put in that baggie because he didn't have any THC in his system, right? So Correct. But it is a bit of potential corroborating evidence of the housekeeper's testimony that that's the type of baggie that the drugs came in. And then we see those type of baggies in the house being used for something else. So it does seem possible that they could have been reused. I don't know. That's just something that came to mind for me as I was looking at those pictures. And then later the housekeeper is describing the baggies that the drugs came in that she gave to Kouri. And it seems like she's describing the baggies that were found with those THC gummies in them. Okay. So I don't know that they're really related, but it just brought that to mind for me. So let's get into the housekeeper. That's Carmen Lauber. So Carmen worked for Kouri's aunt. Kouri's aunt had a house cleaning service. Kouri used her aunt's housekeeping service for a house cleaner to come and clean her house every other Friday. Occasionally, Carmen would reach out to Kouri when she didn't have work and say, hey, do you have anything for me? And because Kouri did some house flipping, sometimes she would have her clean houses that she had flipped. She has a history of drug addiction. She says that she started using drugs when she was in 6th grade. She started with pot and then she moved on to pretty much everything else. Meth, cocaine, opioids, but she never did fentanyl. She said one of her daughters overdosed on fentanyl and she was wary of it. But she does have criminal history for drug possession, drug distribution. She's currently on probation for drug distribution at the time of trial. And she has a immunity deal with the federal government and with the 2 counties that are involved in this case, where she purchased drugs in one county and then transported it to another county and gave it to Kouri. So she's got all of these charges associated with the case, and they gave her immunity if she would talk to them and be forthright about what she did and all of that. So when the trial occurred, she'd been sober, she claims, for a little bit over 4 years, which is the longest amount of time she's ever been sober. Said the only other time she would be sober is during her pregnancies, and then she'd go right back to using after her pregnancies were done. Well, at least there's that. Yeah, definitely. I can imagine it would be hard to do even that for some people. Yeah, definitely. We know it. That's the case, that a lot of people can't stop using during their pregnancies. Yeah. So the state points out that one of the conditions of that immunity is that she testifies fully and truthfully in court. And she had interviews with detectives 6 or 7 times before she got the immunity deals, and she did share information knowing that it could implicate her and she could face charges as a result of what she was sharing. So it does seem like she was coming clean and talking about some of these things before getting an immunity deal. She did say she hoped that she would get immunity by agreeing to testify, and that she hadn't talked to an attorney or anything before talking to investigators. She had felt like it was important for her to come clean and share any information that she had that may have played a part in Eric's death, even though she didn't have any knowledge that it might be used in that way or was potentially used in that way. But when she realized maybe it was, she wanted to share that information. Yeah, I definitely could see being like, okay, whoa, like, yes, I've done some illegal things, but I'm not involved in murder, and that's a big enough deal for me to come forward about those things, even though I've done these other things. So it's definitely a point to her credit, I believe. I agree. I mean, it's hard. She did talk about, because of her long history of drug use from a very early age, that
her memory has been impacted by some of those things. She also has a learning disability, and she doesn't have a high level of education either. And so, she's doing her best, and sometimes she did get confused by the questioning, and it was confusing, honestly. The defense attorney that questioned her, it was so painful to listen to. Oh my gosh, it was so painful. Even the judge would step in sometimes and say, okay, hey, I'm not following what you're saying. This is really confusing. You have to be more clear. You need to, so he was instructing her during the questioning too. And like, if the judge can't follow, who obviously has a high degree of intelligence and education, how do you expect this individual who doesn't to be able to follow what you're saying? And so I think for me, I felt like, well, I had to be careful how I interpreted her answers, because sometimes the way the question was asked and what she was referring to specifically was a little bit unclear. So she cross-examined her for like half a day one day, and then half a day the next day too.
Wow.
So it was a really long testimony, understandably so, because it plays a big part in the possibility of Kouri's conviction.
It's interesting that the majority of that time was spent in cross.
Yeah, right. That's true. She states that Kouri had reached out to her and said, hey, I have an investor, which I think is interesting that she used that term. I have an investor who is looking for something, pain pills of some sort. Is that something that you might be able to help me get? And so she says, yeah, well, I can, check into things. At the time, she was participating in drug court, which is when you've been caught for drug offenses, you can do a plea in advance and they work with you. You're going to group therapy 5 days a week, all day. You're doing random drug testing where you call in every day and find out if you were going to get drug tested. You have individual therapy. You have medications if you need it to help. You're checking in regularly. So it's a very intense thing. And if you pass and get through drug court, which there's like 5 different stages that you have to go through to graduate, then the charges won't go on to your record. But if you fail drug court and you get kicked off, then those charges become active and you could serve jail time and et cetera, et cetera. So her associating with people that did drugs, breaking the conditions of drug court, helping somebody get drugs, also problematic, right? And she also was using drugs periodically through that time too. So she wasn't clean. She admitted, yeah, I at the beginning was kind of pushing the conditions and seeing what I could get away with, and I wasn't doing what I should have done. So the first time she reached out to, I think through another employee of the house cleaning service, and they hooked her up with someone, or it was a friend that she already knew or something. And she asked her, hey, do you have anything? And I think that individual gave her some oxycodone, and she fronted the money, she says, to pay for it, which was $600. And then she told Kouri she had it. She arranged to leave it. There were some things about like, oh, okay, I left it in the closet in this box, or I left it in a fire pit, or there were some different places that she left it on the different drops. And where she got the money from. She said that Kouri then had left money in a box in a house that she had flipped, and she went and got the money and left the drugs in there, I think.
So she would do this for her multiple times.
Well, that was the first time that she did it, and then she did it 3 other times. And where she would do the drops varied some between the different instances where she did this. So she couldn't remember when exactly the first thing happened. The first transaction, she said there was still snow on the ground, so she thinks like January or February, but she's not positive. And that was from someone that was up in the area where they lived nearby. And then Kouri had asked if she had anything stronger, and she said she would look into it. So she asked around, and someone said, hey, I have a contact, gave her the name of a friend down in Salt Lake County, and he said, well, let me ask around. Let me check into things. I'll get back to you. Eventually, he says, okay, I found a guy. I can get some stuff. And they arranged to meet at the Maverick in Draper. So she had her friend, Nancy, drive her down the canyon to the Maverick. They arranged to meet up with him. He also had to find a ride to get there, too. And then she would give him the money. He would leave. And about 20 or 30 minutes later, he would come back with the product and give it to her.
Interesting. And they had to have people drive them to, like, cover their tracks, or just because neither of them could drive?
They didn't have cars. Yeah, they didn't have cars. And Carmen, who is the house cleaner, she didn't have a license either. So even though she did drive sometimes without a license, she didn't have an active driver's license, and she shouldn't have been driving, and she didn't have a car. So she says the second time she had told Kouri, well, it's going to be more. It's going to be $1,000. So she needed that money in advance. So Kouri had arranged a drop-off thing where she had left the money. Carmen had gone and got the money and then went down, did the transaction, said, hey, I'm on my way back. Where do you want me to drop this stuff off? And she would leave it wherever Kouri indicated. On the third time, Kouri said, hey, do you still have that contact? And there was an exchange that they did find on a cell phone that did seem to match up with what Carmen was saying. I don't know if she said she wanted the same thing as last time, but then when she reached out to the guy, he said what he could get was fentanyl. And that she had told Kouri, well, what he has is fentanyl. And she said, yeah, go ahead and get that. And so she states that she got the fentanyl and brought that back. And that one, I think she said she buried in a fire pit or something. And Kouri, I don't know, was going to come get it, right? She doesn't know who picked it up. And then Eric dies of a fentanyl overdose. A few days after Eric's death, Kouri reaches out again and asks if she can get her something. And again, she's saying, my investor wants, right? And so she gets something else for Kouri, and she drops that off. So they're kind of different locations, and I can't keep track which locations were with which event. But
do they have text messages of her saying what he has is fentanyl, or that was just an on-the-phone conversation, or?
Well, she says she was pretty careful to just say, hey, I need to talk, or write in cryptic terms, or any text messages that were sent that had anything to do with that. She deleted all of them because she knew she might have someone ask to look at her phone, and she didn't want any evidence on there of any improper activity.
I wonder how long it took them to get Kouri's phone.
Right. I think hers might have been a month.
Yeah, because she definitely could have deleted text messages surrounding fentanyl as well.
For sure.
And you think she would if she was guilty of this, for sure.
Right.
Can't prove that she did, that they existed, but,
Right. Well, so I said the first time she did it was with someone local. So she had arranged and gotten the stuff from her. But the other 3 times she had to come down the canyon to Draper, and she didn't have a car, so she would have to arrange to get a ride. Twice her friend Nancy drove her, and one time her friend Nick drove her. Or maybe it was one time Nancy and 2 times Nick. I'm not sure. But there is a photograph of her with Nancy when she says she was driving down the canyon to pick up the drugs, which helps place the date that buy occurred. Then also, after Eric's death, someone had told Carmen that Eric died of an overdose. And she called Kouri, and she was on speakerphone, and her friend was also in the car when this conversation took place. And I understand he's going to be a witness later on in the trial. So it'll be interesting to see that. But she says, please tell me that he didn't die from the stuff that I gave you, that I got for you. And she says, oh no, he died of an aneurysm, which also it's like, well, that's what the one EMT says. Maybe he died of an aneurysm because of the blood that was coming out of his mouth and it was abnormal. So I don't know. Maybe that was because that was only a few days after his death, maybe she was using that supposition by the EMT and she told her that. But then later on, when the authorities come to Carmen, that's when she learns that he actually died of a fentanyl overdose. And then she feels like, okay, I need to come clean with my part in it. And the one thing, like, the defense wants to bring out, well, you're getting these really sweet deals for testifying in this case against Kouri. But to me, I'm like, well, these charges are related to her telling them what she did. If she didn't tell them what she did, she wouldn't need immunity. So if she just kept it to herself, how would they know any of the information that she's getting immunity for?
Right.
Carmen was arrested for some infraction on her drug court. And they did say, hey, we can help you out if you help us out. But by helping them out, she told them a bunch of stuff that incriminated herself if it were true. And she did that without immunity on the table.
Right. You would hope also, now it's not always the reality, but you would hope that the police officers or the investigators are requesting her to tell the truth in exchange for immunity and not make the story work for us and you'll get an immunity, you know?
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I mean, obviously the defense is always going to point out that you're getting advantages, you're getting something out of this, so maybe we can't really give a lot of weight to what you're saying. And she also does say, okay, well, it says that you have to testify fully and truthfully. Well, who decides whether or not you testified fully and truthfully? Is it the state? Because only they're going to say you testified fully and truthfully if you say what they want you to say? Or is it you're really testifying fully and truthfully? So who decides that? And she's like, I have no idea.
Right. She's just like, well, the only way I can do that is by testifying to what I know.
Right.
So if they think I'm lying, they think I'm lying, but I don't, you know.
Yeah, right. Well, so I mentioned that there were 3 drug buys before Eric's death. There was 1 drug buy after Eric's death. And later on, I guess the guy that she got hooked up with in Draper had said, hey, I've got some stuff. Does your person want something? And so she reached out to Kouri and she says, oh, my investor has left town, so I don't need it anymore. And yeah. When did he leave? Right about March 2nd or 3rd, 4th, whatever it was. Yeah. But
I mean, she did ask for more after his death.
Yes.
So
right. Yeah, she did.
So more than likely it just means that's the coding she was using for herself, probably.
Yeah,
right.
Very possibly. Yeah. Okay, what made things confusing is that in her initial interviews with detectives, that she referred to 3 occasions that she bought drugs, and she insisted it was 3. To me, though, I'm thinking, well, there were 3 before Eric's death. There was 1 that was after Eric's death. That one I could see that maybe you're not really even thinking about because these are the ones that occurred that
they
could have been related to the death. And the other one was afterwards. But the defense attorney has these huge binders, hundreds of pages in these binders, some of them, that's the transcript of her interviews with law enforcement on 3 or 4 occasions or something. And she's using them to impeach Carmen's testimony and saying, well, you're saying this today, but back in this interview, you said this. And then in this one, you said this. What's confusing is that she's asking her, okay, well, so then you said this. Is that correct that that's what you said during that interview? But it's also confusing as to whether she's saying that's correct based on my understanding today, or that's correct, I did say that in that interview. And so it's really confusing whether she's trying to get her to agree that that information is correct or that that reading of the text is correct. Right? The thing that I found interesting is pretty much all the details were all there as far as the closet, the Midway house, the money, the people, But some of them maybe were like, oh, well, this time she says that the fire pit was with this by, and then another in court, she's saying it was with this by. And I'm like, does that really matter so much? I don't know. And the other thing that the defense wants to harp on is in these interviews with detectives, she says basically they laid it out for her. But it's clear to me that they're using text messages, cell phone data, showing her travel right to that location, deposits in her bank account, all of these things that build like, okay, this is when that happened, right? What happened, she was pretty clear on, right? Like, I did buy drugs for her. I can't remember the exact dates. And they say, well, here's your cell phone movements. That matches up with what you're saying that you went to the Maverick. Here's this deposit in your bank account. That line, like all of those things that kind of line up with what she's saying. The defense wants to say that they're building the timeline for her and telling her what to say. They laid it all out for you. And also she said in one snippet, like, you write it out for me and I'll sign it. And so they're using that. Well, you just write out what you want my statement to be and I'll sign it. But if, like, reading the information before, they were asking her to write out her statement. She doesn't feel comfortable and confident writing. She's has a learning disability. It's hard for her. And so she asked them, well, you write it out for me and I'll sign it. So I think that's different. When you look at the context, she's not saying, you write down what you think I should say or what you want me to say and I'll sign it. She's saying, will you write it for me? I don't feel like I can do a good job writing it myself. Spelling, writing, like all of those things that she's just not confident in and asking if they'll write out her statement.
Right. It's like, write out based on what I've told you and I'll confirm if that's true or not and I'll sign it if it is,
Right.
But, and maybe she didn't read it through it. That's certainly something. But
sure,
they have the transcript of everything she did say. So if it doesn't match the written statement, then they're you could point that out.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So it is interesting, and you could point the finger at them in the same way and say, well, you're laying out that she said this, so you're telling her to agree that she said this thing. And it's like, well, they're just using the info that they had available to them and not saying. Like, it's based on evidence, not based on nothing.
Right.
Or just what they want her to say.
Right.
And the story is hers, like you said. The timing, understandable that she doesn't remember the exact timing. And they're like, well, yeah.
Right. They're like, here's all the corroborating evidence that says it was this, and this is, so I'm like, I don't think they're saying, hey, look, this is the day we want you to say you did this or
right. We
whatever.
see that you did go to that Maverick on this day. Do you think that it's possible that that was the day that this occurred? And it's like, yeah, if I went to that Maverick, I never went there for any other reason. So that's probably the day that it happened.
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's what she said. And of course they had her cell phone, as part of evidence and what her movements were and things like that to support that. And she says, yeah, those are the only times I ever went to that Maverick was to do these deals. And these are the dates that they were, now off the top of her head, she can't remember all the dates that those transactions took place, but she says, well, if I had this data to look at, I could tell you exactly, but I do have a hard time just remembering all the details just off the top of my head to testify today. But I'm testifying as truthfully as I can and trying to be accurate. But I mean, the defense really tears into her about, yeah, but you really weren't keeping to the conditions of drug court and you were failing, you were missing some groups and you were getting sanctioned and you were getting fined and you missed some drug tests and you tested positive, basically you were using all during this time. And so maybe you were just getting drugs for yourself. Right? You got those things for you, or you were getting those and taking some of those for yourself to sell or to use yourself and giving the rest of them to Kouri, but you were benefiting in this way from those drugs.
I fail to see the relevance because they have the text messages with Kouri, so they know that she's asking her for something And it
Right.
does seem like coded language, so if they didn't have any evidence of communication in that way, then it would be like, okay, maybe she just went to get stuff for herself, but...
Right, and then the timing of her actually going down the canyon and going to that Maverick, if they match up within a couple days after sending that message.
And I'd imagine that they also have Kouri's location data, so they could also see her going to those same locations shortly after.
Right, that's true. That's true. They haven't asked about those things. That hasn't come up because she wouldn't be able to testify to that. But later on, if we get into cell phone data and it shows Kouri's movements, maybe we'll learn some of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like that's something that they could use to corroborate those statements.
Right. For sure. Yeah, for sure. Basically, they want to show inconsistencies in her stories, that she lied to investigators early on. And she said something about lying, and then the defense attorney said, yeah, addicts lie, kind of like, you're an addict, therefore you're lying right now. And she says active addicts lie, which she's saying, I've been clean now. And yeah, my memory was not that great at that time. I wasn't clean, but now over this past 4 years, I haven't been using. My mind is clearer. I've been able to review these things and put things together. I'm better able to remember what happened and the circumstances around it because my brain is not clouded by drug use and all of that. Right. So I don't know. I really felt for her and felt like she was trying to do her best. And I mean, she was teary sometimes as she was talking about some things, but it was interesting to watch Kouri's face. They did, kind of zoom in on her on some parts of her testimony. And Kouri was doing a kind of head tilted forward, eyes looking upward, brows raised of really? For real? That's what you're saying? Incredulity, right? That type of look that she's just I don't know, as a jury watching that, her expressions, what does that say to them? Because it did read as, I don't know, some of it was kind of this, meet my eyes, I'm watching you, how dare you be sitting here either telling this stuff that's actually true and getting in trouble, or saying things that I know not to be true, So it's hard to know which of those it was, but typically defendants don't show emotion for the most part. They're supposed to sit there and be as neutral as possible and listen, but she was not neutral during Carmen's testimony. So that was interesting to see that.
Right. Or the other option is it put on?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it could be making a show of it for other people, for the jury. I don't know.
Right. Get a load of that guy. What? That crazy. That story's crazy.
Yeah. So the state comes back up after the defense gets done cross-examining her.
For 2 days. Well, a day.
Right. A
half
day
a day
total,
and another
right.
half a day.
Yeah, so they get up and they use the transcript, which I think was powerful when you consider that the defense is using all of this stuff to make her look bad and show how she's saying different things, or she said things that they can show were lies way back when she first started talking to them. And so maybe you're just telling lies now, or they're the ones who told you that it must have been fentanyl that you bought before you insisted you didn't buy fentanyl. So the defense had used this line from the transcript where the investigators tell Carmen that, hey, you have a big get out of jail free card if you help us. And they throw that out as you can't trust anything that she says because this is all to get out of jail free and get all of these benefits. So she's really just in it for what she can get for herself. She's an addict and she's not reliable and she's, whatever. And the prosecutor gets up and says, okay, let's look at that transcript where they say that you have this get out of jail free card if you help them. What is the first thing that you say after they tell you that? Her reply is, even if that wasn't the case, I need to step up and take responsibility for what happened to Eric. So I think that shows that she had recognized, if I played any part in this, part of addiction recovery is taking accountability, making restitution, right? Like, and her saying, if what I did contributed in any way to Eric's death, I need to come clean. Whether I end up getting in trouble or not, I need to take responsibility.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No, I think that is at least was kind of a powerful moment for me hearing that. And yeah, you could say, well, yeah, it's easy to say when you know you're getting an immunity deal. But either way, I'm sure this whole event was very instrumental in her becoming clean. Being like, okay, I was involved in this life and this is what it led to. And wow, maybe that's a sign I need to get out.
Right. Yeah, and she said she knew Eric. She liked him. He was always friendly to her. She said, yeah, he was such a good guy. He didn't deserve that, and I feel terrible if anything that I did contributed to his death.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that she's complicit.
Right.
If she did provide her with fentanyl, there's no evidence we've seen that there was collusion for what it would be used for.
Correct.
So...
yeah.
But still, I could understand feeling a sense of responsibility when something you did had that outcome.
Yep. Agreed. So we will end with that. And I think for those who are interested, going back and watching some of her testimony and getting a feel for her, you might find valuable. I think people may interpret it varying ways. They may think that she's just making stuff up for her own benefit. That's not the read that I got from it, but I don't know. I need to see the other evidence that's presented. But the other interesting thing is that the defense is not denying that Kouri got drugs from Carmen. They're just saying it was never fentanyl. It was always Oxy or Roxy. It was never fentanyl. And now all of a sudden the detectives are saying, don't you think it could be fentanyl? And putting that in. And at first she was saying, no, it was never fentanyl. She never asked for fentanyl. I never, and then later she does say, okay, yes. So did she change her story? I mean, she changed her story, but was she just trying to cover up the fact that it was fentanyl? Or was it when she learned it was actually fentanyl overdose that she realized, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, I need to, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Right. And they're showing the transcript that she was saying that it wasn't fentanyl.
Correct.
Which is definitely interesting, like to be insistent that it was not and then later say that it was. But it's also like the only thing that makes sense in a way, because where else would it have come from? We have no leads on who got it. Like,
right. And the fact that Kouri is admitting, yes, I did buy drugs from her. I did have her get drugs for me. It just wasn't fentanyl. Like, yeah, but then where did that come from?
Right. And it kind of makes me think that potentially, like, if she did it, because I'm sure you could also achieve an overdose with Oxy.
Right.
So it's more so like, if she did this, right, it's not like this was the first time she ever asked for drugs. So she obviously used Oxy.
Right. Or they're saying that she got it for Eric.
Right.
And Eric was using the Oxy and she was getting it for him. The other thing is Carmen never said that Kouri asked specifically for fentanyl. She reached out to the guy and he says, this is what I have.
Exactly.
And she said, well, he's got fentanyl. And she said, yeah, go ahead and get it. So maybe she wasn't actively searching for fentanyl, but when said, oh, well, this is what he can get, she took it.
Right. Well, and my thought being she obviously had a preference for Oxy, and it's kind of interesting to think that, like, if this one instance was, I want to get this to kill my husband, and this happens to be the instance where they don't have the drug that she prefers, that she's like, sure, whatever, that'll do. It will kill him just as well.
Right. Well, and Carmen said that there were some times that Kouri was specific about what she wanted, and Carmen's like, that's not the way it works. Like, you can't just order it up. You have to take what they've got. So I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to get that specific thing. And she did describe the color of the pills each time that she got them. And the description that she had of the third set of pills that she bought does match fentanyl. I mean, it can be different colors, but it is known that they call them blues on the street, and that third batch of pills she got were blue. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to make of that, but it matches up with the greens were Oxy 30s and the blues were fentanyl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, and I really only know what we've been talking about. Like, I haven't really done much independent research on this. I haven't heard really anything about it. So, again, my views are all based on what we're hearing right now.
Right.
And not on stuff I know that's outside of this.
Right, and the same for me. I've only listened to halfway into day 5.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of stuff that I don't know yet. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is that at one point in Carmen's interviews, she states that Kouri asked her specifically for the Michael Jackson drug, and Carmen didn't know what that was. So she had to look it up or ask someone or find out.
She's like, I didn't want to let her know I didn't know what that was.
Right.
So
I'm a druggie. How can I not know?
Like, yeah, I'll get that. I don't want to look stupid. And then I go and look it up.
Right. But I'm like, the Michael Jackson drug is Propofol.
That's what he overdosed on. Yeah.
So the fact that Kouri asked for the Michael Jackson drug, which is Propofol, I think that's one of the things that Carmen was like, I don't know if I can get you that. Like, I don't even know what it is, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to figure out what it is, but and then you can't get Propofol just on the street. Like, it's not something that you can.
Right. And the only reason it would even be known as the Michael Jackson drug is because that's what he overdosed on. And then, interestingly enough, her husband dies of a drug overdose.
Right. So I'm like, what would be the legitimate reason to get Propofol? And like, that's what they knock people out for, to do procedures or dogs or whatever. Like, you don't use Propofol for pain or for something like that. Mm-hmm. It's a weird thing to request.
Yeah. And also goes against the idea that, like, well, it was always Oxy. And now that's only according to her, but it's a weird thing to make up.
Right.
When it doesn't. It's understandable to maybe be like, oh, fentanyl fits the story, but this doesn't fit the story. It's weird and a weird way to ask for it. The Michael Jackson drug.
Right. It is very strange, and there's no legit reason to be asking for it. So that makes it look bad for Kouri, especially if Carmen's not even sure what it is. And she's like, oh, I think in one of the interviews she says, oh, isn't that fentanyl? Or something. Like, she doesn't know for sure what it is, but she just knows. She asked specifically about getting the Michael Jackson drug, and she wasn't sure what that was. And maybe she was like, oh, maybe it's fentanyl? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But maybe when she got fentanyl, she thought she was getting the Michael Jackson drug. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Carmen.
Well, that's a lot. And many, many lives lived by Carmen. I feel like, many sides.
Yeah.
But, I hope she's doing better now. I mean, it seems that she is as far as being clean, but, I hope she's...
Yeah, she looked good. She looked healthy. She looked clean. She was clear-headed. I've seen it, and she definitely looked like she wasn't having problems currently. Mm-hmm. So, that was good, and it seemed like she was really making progress and feeling good about herself and her where she was at, which is great to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope she's not lying and making things up and ending up causing some sort of miscarriage of justice as a result of saying these things. Yeah. But so I can't really tell you what we're going to talk about next time because I haven't heard it yet, but it is actually testimony that I was there for. So I do know it is some people that knew Kouri or knew Kouri through somebody else. And so there's kind of more personal testimony of friends and acquaintances that are going to testify.
Like some character witness type things.
So it's not just character witness, it is presence at certain events that she has some information to share.
Right. And also not really thinking about the fact that these are witnesses called by the state. So nobody's coming up there specifically for the purpose of defending her right now.
Right. Well, this friend is not a willing witness for the state. Mm-hmm. For sure. But we'll talk about that next time. So,
okay.
But thanks for hanging out with us. We're glad that you joined us. We hope you join us next time. Until then,
I'm Marin.
I'm Christie.
And you've been listening to Hung.